Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to stand here in this honorable house once again to add my voice to the debate for the Appropriation Bill 2020-2021. I will ask leave of you, Mr. Speaker, to extend special greetings to the people of Castries South-East. The people, Mr. Speaker, who have elected me to represent them and their interest over the last 3 elections in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I spent 5 years in opposition and now back in government in the 4th year, beginning the 5th year of this term in office. Mr. Speaker, I have to extend special thanks to God for His blessings upon me, my family, my constituents, and St. Lucia at large. Mr. Speaker, these are difficult and trying times. But before I go into the full presentation, I would like to focus on my accomplishments in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, and I need to put this into perspective. I have members opposite talking about they shall do this and they shall do that. Well, I'll tell them is one shall I know, and that shall is Flabo. Yes, yes. But we are not just a government of I shall, we are a government of I do. Yes. Mr. Speaker, every member sitting on this side of the House have presented, and that is just a fraction of their accomplishments over the last 4 years in government. And Mr. Speaker, I have members opposite talking about, oh, they have done nothing for 4 years. Well, Mr. Speaker, if that is nothing, then I will continue to choose nothing over what the Labour Party promises and never delivers. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have over 51 slides of things that have been done between my ministry and my constituency. And so I know that the public would look at it and they would just see a litany of projects for a constituency, Mr. Speaker, that was victimized for 5 years by the Labour Party in office. A parliamentary rep who was made to beg for things for his constituency, but never got them. Mr. Speaker, there are 31 slides, and we can run through them. We have the body chaussee drill, body chaussee court drainage and footpath. And some of these things are under the DVRP, some of them are under CDP. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about people empowerment, this is the government that knows how to empower the little people of this country. And not only do the members opposite don't like the little people in size, they don't like the little people who are poor and deprived in the communities in St. Lucia. Their track record is there to show, and I will come to the FFFs. I will come to them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the body chaussee court was refurbished because during the time in opposition, they did nothing to attend to anything. We have the BELAIR housing development project coming on stream. Mr. Speaker, this government acquired 44 acres of land. And when you talk about the little people, Mr. Speaker, the acquisition of this property was designed to be in a manner that the little people can afford to own a piece of St. Lucia themselves without having to go and face the bank for a big loan. That is what representation of the little people. That's what it's all about. Then, Mr. Speaker, we have the BELAIR Road Rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, over the years, I can tell you, when I first ran elections in 2006, I got only 33 votes from the community of BELAIR. My opponent, then Ms. Menisa Rambali, beat me 2-1 in the community of BELAIR. You see, my representation is not about whether you vote for me or you don't vote for me. My representation is for all the people. And the BELAIR community has been transformed by this government, despite the fact that I got only 33 votes. But you know, by the last election, Mr. Speaker, I had won BELAIR by over 30 votes. Because the people understand what quality representation. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party has a track record. You know, when they know you are accustomed of voting for them, they neglect you. Because you have said, Mr. Speaker, say no matter si nou fe, si nou pa fe, you can still vote bano. That is what was happening in the community of SOUFRIERE until they changed representation and saw what real representation is in the community of SOUFRIERE. And if you take ancillary canneries, the only time ancillary canneries has featured in this cabinet is when in this parliament, in the cabinet of St. Lucia. They are in the parliament, but not in the cabinet. Is when UWP is in office. Both with the previous UWP rep and this present representative who has shown them what real representation is about. Mr. Speaker, I move on. We have the Bexon Cemetery Road, Mr. Speaker. We have the Bexon roundabout drainage. We are doing drainage to mitigate against flooding. Mr. Speaker, we cannot stop flooding like some people promise to, but we know that the work we are doing will help to reduce the impact of flooding in the community. Mr. Speaker, we have the roundabout drainage. We have the Bexon Community Center. Mr. Speaker, the constituency of Castries South-East has no major public facilities apart from schools. We have designed a new community center and it is out for tender, Mr. Speaker. And before the end of this year, construction work will begin on that community center in the community of Bexon. Mr. Speaker, everybody talks about tourism. I think we are one of the two constituencies that have no beachfront. So we are landlocked. We are on the inside. There's no part of our constituency that touches the ocean. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? We have to benefit from the tourism market also. And what we have done is we have designed the Bexon Flea Market. Now this market is going to be like a rest point, like what you have in DENNERY. And then when the tourists are traveling, they will be able to stop there and get a rest. There'll be rest points along the way so that there'll be more comfort for the people. And the people themselves will have a place to recreate in the area. So that's the Bexon market. We have the Capital Road Water Project. Mr. Speaker, when members speak about what they are doing, we did both a road and we didn't just put a concrete road. We ran new pipes in the area of Capitol Hill before we started the process of being able to put the concrete. Then, Mr. Speaker, you have the country village drainage. That's an area just behind my constituency office, always flooding. So we had to go and put proper drainage there to help reduce the flooding. We have the CROWNLANDS drain. We have the FORESTIERRE Housing Development Project. Mr. Speaker, if I have to speak about every one of these, it's going to take so long, so I'm running through. The FORESTIERRE Housing Development Project, Mr. Speaker, We sold the land, and the people are now building houses. There are 4 people who have completed their houses and have moved in, and there are about 3 or 4 other houses being built presently in the community. That is both economic generation, job creation, Mr. Speaker, while contributing to the economy. Mr. Speaker, I move on. FORESTIERRE HRDC. That is under the Taiwanese funded project. A new community center coming to the community of FORESTIERRE. And also, Mr. Speaker, we have rehabilitated the FORESTIERRE road to a proper road. And Mr. Speaker, my wife is in the gallery. She was one of the persons who told me several occasions, I'm a constituent. And the road is really bad. And Mr. Speaker, I told them I'm not doing potholing on that road. I want a new road, and I applaud the Prime Minister and Minister of Infrastructure for delivering for the people of FORESTIERRE a well-deserved road. Mr. Speaker, there's the FORESTIERRE drainage. Then housing assistance, Mr. Speaker. When they talk about ODB, look at these houses up there, Mr. Speaker. These are houses built in the constituency from start to finish by the constituency for deprived families within the constituency. But you see, Mr. Speaker, because now that's just 2 out of about 30 houses we've done in the constituency. And in the previous term, we did about 50 houses. But because we don't go on television and put people handing keys, everybody don't have to know is a politician that built a house for a deprived family. We respect the integrity of the people, but the people know who's working for them, Mr. Speaker. They know who's working for them. Then we have the Labey drainage. We have the Mac drainage. We have the Freedom Plaza drainage. We have the Mac Boulder parking. Mr. Speaker, I need to move quickly because there are so many of them. We have the Montfortune Liberty Park. You know, Mr. Speaker, we have Wavin Paso Music Studio. I want to show them, when they talk about what people are doing, we are building a recording studio in the community of Wavin Paso because some of the top singers within the constituency are concentrated within that area, so somewhere where they can produce their music. They have their DENNERY segment in DENNERY. But we are known for top gospel singing in St. Lucia. And we want to give them somewhere where they too can record their songs and make it available on the market, Mr. Speaker.
I support that.
So we cater for every sector of the society, Mr. Speaker. Those who are religious, those who are singing calypso, those who are singing the DENNERY segment, we cater. We are government for all the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I move on. The ODSAN Community Center. Mr. Speaker, I understood that the Central Tenders Board made the award earlier this week for the community center in ODSAN. And for those of them on the other side, Mr. Speaker, who say all we do is direct award. 113 contracts have been issued through the DVRP, and every single one of them went through the tender process, competitive process of tendering. Challenge me on my track record. When you all talk about, when members opposite, Mr. Speaker, want to talk about performance, they don't know what performance is, Mr. Speaker. They don't know about performance. Real performance is when you can come to this house and report on what you have accomplished during your term in office. The member for Castries East usually speaks about 25 years. Tell him report 25 years of project. And I challenge him that in 4 years, any member on this side of the house have done more projects in 4 years than he has done in 25 years in his constituency. And the evidence is there. Drive through Castries East and you will see. And if that's any example by which St. Lucia should go, if you cannot, you know what the Bible says, Mr. Speaker? If you are faithful over little things, I will make you ruler over many things. He can't even be faithful over one little constituency. He wants to run the whole of St. Lucia. You see, Mr. Speaker, I need to move on, Mr. Speaker. Wavin Poisson, no, I've done that. ODSAN, playing field and lights. Mr. Speaker, we just had a football competition prior to COVID for the switching on of the lights at the Bexon ODSAN playing field. We just did some boulder packing in that same area to reduce flooding. We built a SARROT multipurpose court. And you know what they say, Mr. Speaker? They say, I build a court and I own a school in the court. I heard the member. I have the certificate of registration for the owner of the school. But you see, because the matter is going to go to court, Mr. Speaker, I'm not making it available. But Honorable Member for Castries South, after the sitting of the House, I will let you look at the registration certificate, because those who do business under the table, I'm not one of them. Everything that is done in my constituency is done the way that it ought to be done. And I applaud the young people who got together to create employment for themselves by starting a preschool in the community to give service to the community and create jobs for themselves. I applaud them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, SARROT drainage, Sun Valley Park, Tetmac drainage, Rocher retaining wall. Mr. Speaker, the list goes on, you know. Now, I don't want my colleagues to think that all the projects are coming to my constituency. No. Honorable Member, that is 4 years of representation. 4 years of representation. You see, when members tell you you've not done anything, you have to ask yourself, so all of these things are nothing in the eyes of Labour Party. Well, if all of this is nothing, you know, for 15 years under Labour, what should be happening, Mr. Speaker? We should be walking on streets of gold, and the land should be flowing with milk and honey. Because if all of that is nothing, then tell me what the 15 years amounted to. Other projects, Mr. Speaker, that's coming on stream. Forestier Nature Trail. No, that road was done to the nature trail, but the nature trail we have worked with forestry is coming on stream. ODSAN Road Rehabilitation, Macbexon desilting, Lacqua retaining wall, Goodlands concrete drain, therefore footpaths. Mr. Speaker, there are too many things. Now let's talk about ministry. Under DVRP, Mr. Speaker, when they tell you we have done nothing, I want to challenge them that for the 5 years in government, they were only able to spend $20 million of the DVRP money that was allocated to them. Since I came into office, we've committed over $80 million of the DVRP in projects throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia. So let's run through some of them, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, MICOUD Secondary School, that new wing is coming on stream. The tenders have gone through, the contract has been awarded, work should have started. MICOUD Wellness Center. Mr. Speaker, we must not forget how MICOUD was victimized to the point where the highway was skipped from Parliamentary Bridge to Connell's Bridge when Labour Party was in office. They were paving the highway that links the north to the south. When they reached the Parliamentary Bridge, which is the beginning of MICOUD North, and Connell's, which is the end of MICOUD South, they skipped that piece of road in between, and they repaired the roads leading to Viewfort and leading to Castries. And you know what they did? They add all the way to Sanssouci Bridge as part of the road, the East Coast Road, and they excluded MICOUD. That is victimization. That is what the Labour Party did when they were in office. You want to report on performance? You want to report on performance? DENNERY Polyclinic, Mr. Speaker. This is the drawing that we inherited, that after we started the building, we could not. That's the old rendering. That is the new rendering. And as I speak up to this morning, the contractor was engaged, and work is going to begin on completing the DENNERY Polyclinic with a proper structured building that is built for resilience. Because remember, this is disaster vulnerability reduction project MORNE. BLANCHARD Community Center, Mr. Speaker. That is what is coming, and I know work has started on the BLANCHARD Community Center. The CHOSIUEL Secondary School, the new wing, that was done as a DVRP project that for years the Labour Party sat on it and could not get it done. And this project was done under the United Workers' Party and under the leadership of the honorable member for CHOSIUEL Saltibus. He promised the people of CHOSIUEL and he delivered.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker, you know, on the CDP, they tell you, oh, we're not doing work, they don't know what is going on. Let's look at CDP. SOUFRIERE, Old Trafford Complex, financed through the CDP under the leadership of the honorable member for SOUFRIERE, Forceja.
Right.
Castries Central, car wash. You know, that is what people on this side understand about representation. You see, y'all like to give a man a fish so he can come and beg y'all every time. On this side, we teach the people how to fish, and that is what the member for Castries Central is doing. Created a car wash that is revenue generated so that the people can earn their own money and do not have to come and beg a parliamentary rep for a handout. That is what representation is about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move on. Castries Market Development. You know, Mr. Speaker, in the book Lapses and Infelicities, the member for Viewfort South had a heated argument, and if time permits me, I can read to you what he said to Ras Iper. I will come to it about when they raised the issue about the toilet facilities and what they needed, the new Castries, the market, just the basic repairs. Under this administration, we have delivered a world-class market to the vendors, the little people of St. Lucia. You want to tell me about little people? You want to tell me about gouvernement Malewe? You are gouvernement Malewe to keep people as Malewe, but we are gouvernement Malewe to take people out of being Malewe. That is the difference. That is the difference, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move on. Rosa Farmhouse. Again, the member for Central Castries. The member for Central Castries. Let me tell you, the member for Central Castries has brought representation to a different level with a synergy project. She's giving hope. She's giving hope to the people of Castries Central. Mr. Speaker, I move on. We are reporting on what we have done. Toilet facilities and shed at Garra Cemetery. You know, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members. Honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, can you imagine one member in this honorable house after 25 years is only a toilet he's talking about? You know, but we build toilets where toilets are absolutely necessary. And Mr. Speaker, I heard him talk about, you know, a multi-purpose court that needed 2 boards. Can you believe that? And he's on the record. 2 boards needed. You mean because the government did not put 2 boards, the back of the basketball net? Can you believe that? A rep after 25 years. If I am déplache. Déplache ou ça allait n'importe mon community qui about déplache. Or if it's plywood, because maybe he meant plywood. If it's 2 sheets of plywood, you mean you couldn't buy 2 sheets of plywood or get one nice corporate sponsor to give you 2 sheets of plywood to fix a multi-purpose court for the residents in your constituency because the government didn't do it. You come and report in the House of Parliament that the government did not put 2 boards. Perhaps he say 1 by 6, maybe 1 by 8, or 1 by 12 square inch. Maybe. But I give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe 2 sheets of plywood. $80, $90 a sheet of plywood. Mr. Speaker, if he had asked me that, I would have donated the 2 sheets of plywood for the area. I would not even look for government to give that. You know, that's what you come in and report, and you want to lead this country. Pas un déplace pour manger un multi-purpose court où c'est mon jouer basketball. At least you said the member used to buy his way on the team, member for Castries South. You could have asked him for 2 boards, he would have given it. If he could buy uniforms for the whole national team of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, these people on the other side, Durandeau Community Center. I know my member spoke about it, but you need to understand that CDP, Mr. Speaker, is not just T-Canal projects. While CDP takes care of the T-Canal people, because the people who tell you they love the little people, remember, they were the ones when we cut up jobs to give everybody jobs in the community. You vin a parliament, you di nou se gouvernement T-Canal. Well, I would rather be a T-Canal government who continue to give work to the ordinary people in St. Lucia. That's what representation is about. Mr. Speaker, Rocher Recreational Park in MICOUD South, that is on stream. MICOUD New Extension Park. Now these are projects on the CDP. So Mr. Speaker, well-rounded representation across the length and breadth of St. Lucia. You know, the members there, with the exception of the member for Castries South who just came, Mr. Speaker, all the others have been there. You mean they could not report on one thing they did in their constituency? Some of them have been there 5 terms. You're still Bahadusa, you have it. You know, Mr. Speaker, all of these, the Jackmel playing field, the BLANCHARD footpath. Mr. Speaker, when you in government, the people have to see the value of what you do. And that is what we have reported on. The value of the works that we have done. Economic development, former Minister of Transport, member for Castries South-East. Mr. Speaker. Second as Minister of Transport. Tell him what, ask him what he changed in the transport system, apart from increasing the license fees on the drivers in St. Lucia. When we came in there, you know, Mr. Speaker, it was taking you free, and 4 months after you pay your driver's license, we see a Porsche. As we speak today, every license has been printed up to date. Mr. Speaker, as of yesterday, at 2 p.m., at 2 p.m. yesterday, the system went online. And now people, when I got the report, about 5 persons had paid their driver's license online yesterday. Mr. Speaker.
So why didn't you register the Range Rover?
Mr. Speaker, when we talk about representation, the records are there, Mr. Speaker, and I will go and I will tell you, the member for Castries South, for Viewfort South. Ask him. He was Prime Minister for 10 years, representing Viewfort. And every driver from Viewfort had to come all the way to Castries to pay their driver's license. Under the United Workers' Party government between 2006 and 2011, we opened a branch office for transport in Viewfort where you could do all your transactions. That is representation, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are talking about. You see, Mr. Speaker, some people can talk and some people can work. So when you heard them earlier today and yesterday, you would think that they have all the answers. Answers for what? You know, St. Lucia medium-term development strategy. You know, I think it's Proverbs 28 or somewhere thereabout. I don't want to quote the wrong one. But it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And you know, the Greek word that is used for vision it meant directionless. No direction. So after almost 15 years as Prime Minister, they set up a vision commission. Back to front workers, Mr. Speaker. Mungat what I do for there. That's what they are. Back to front workers. You know, after you spend all your time in government, then you try to figure out what the vision is for being in government. As if one day they woke up and they realize, hey, we are the government and we don't know what to do. So let's put a vision commission to tell us what to do. Mr. Speaker, in less than 4 years, this government came in. And I made a copy. It's already a document of the House, Mr. Speaker. We established the medium-term development strategy for the next 4 years, Mr. Speaker, to chart a clear path of development for this country. Because you need a vision to know where you are going. They are visionless. They are blind. You remember, Mr. Speaker, they cross their eyes and they dot their T's. That is why they don't know where they are going, Mr. Speaker. They are clueless. But I've given them something that they can munch on. And if in the meantime, while they're trying to prepare a manifesto, what we heard they will not pass. Get some ideas in there and prepare a proper manifesto. Even if you can't do the work, we know you cannot do it. So, Mr. Speaker, I can go on and talk about St. Jude Hospital, Mr. Speaker. You know, St. Jude Hospital, we have the police headquarters. And I heard the member. And yesterday, Mr. Speaker, he said, you know, telephones. You know what telephones do? Telephones expose people. And he said politicians have to be so careful. And then he said, where in the world you hear about court and police station? And he even used you as an example, you know, Mr. He said, as a former magistrate, if he had just Googled the last study that came out in the UK, where they are saying the magistrates should sit within the police stations to establish law enforcement or justice in a more speedy manner. There are several instances around the place where courts are being built together with police stations. So the very device that he spoke about, a click of a button on his device would have told him that he is misleading the House by saying what he is saying. But you know what? To try and make us look as if we don't know what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, he chose to mislead the House again and make himself look like a fool because he's talking about the device. And while he said that, I just Googled and I came across a number of places. So, Mr. Speaker, the police deserves the best. And we are building a state-of-the-art police headquarters for our policemen in St. Lucia. And I heard them about concessions for police officers. Let me tell you, I believe any right-thinking country who understands law enforcement would not expose the police officers on the same public buses with the same people they have to arrest. The same people they are supposed to enforce the law. And because the government cannot afford to give every police officer a vehicle to go home, then the best thing that we can do is to give them concessions. And we have started with those who have 5 years or more in the police force. That is just the start, Mr. Speaker. And I heard them want to speak against it. You all can speak against it. You can call it election gimmick. You've had 15 years in government. You've run how many elections? 5 elections. You never promised them that. Today, we are not promising. We are delivering because we are the I do government. Not shall. The only shall is there for both. We are the I do government. And that is what we are doing. St. Jude Hospital, we'll come to Barabbas just now, don't worry. We'll come to Barabbas. Mr. Speaker, St. Jude Hospital. You know, that is what they call a monstrosity. And member for library, I want you to look at this. We are building a world-class facility in Beaufort, and they call it a monstrosity. So let me tell you, honorable member. Let me tell you, honorable member. I would choose this monstrosity over the 25 little buildings you put together to try and make it into a hospital. 25 buildings is what constituted the old. Pay attention, honorable member. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Mr. Speaker, you can call it a monstrosity if you want. But you know what? Apart from that, there's a helipad on top of this hospital. So that when those who are in Castries get sick, they don't have to take the bus to rush down to Beaufort. They can take the air ambulance and land right on top of the St. Jude Hospital and get medical care. That is what Beaufort deserves. Beaufort deserves nothing less than that. Galvanize laute me lesen Judes la ki te haka singla. Landa helicopter le. The blue galvanized roof you have there. Landa helicopter of it. I know you know about Tululu and Zagaya. You don't know nothing else.
Honorable members.
That is what you know.
Honorable
Stick
member.
to what you know. Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
That's all
Mr.
right.
Speaker, through you.
Honorable member, let's keep the temperature down. Proceed, sir.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I am not sure I would have behaved exactly like the members opposite. I would be concerned if I was looking at the government that I want to oppose, accomplishing all of that in 4 years against my track record. I would be concerned. So I well appreciate and I sympathize with the members on the opposite side. Mr. Speaker, if I had to defend myself against such a remarkable track record, I would not know what to do. You know, Mr. Speaker, the member for Castries South deliberately sometimes and calculatedly continues to mislead the House. And I heard him talk about Sandals and the waiver of $24 million. He knows that's not true. He knows it's the penalty fees that he was talking about. But Mr. Speaker, sometimes they force you to say the things that you not normally say. Cabinet conclusion, 26 May 2014. So you know who was in government. Request for waiver of taxes, interest, penalties, Premium Hotel Investment Limited. And here what they give. 100% waiver of outstanding hotel accommodation tax. You heard this? Money collected on behalf of the government. 100% waiver. You think that's all? 100% waiver of outstanding vendors tax. 100% waiver of outstanding PAYE. Pay as you earn taxes. They were members of the cabinet. Look it. I can make it a document of the House, Mr. Speaker. Cabinet conclusion. Don't come and lie to the people of St. Lucia. Don't do that. Don't do that. You all continue to mislead the people of St. Lucia. You waive PAYE. Look it. I'll make it available, Mr. Speaker. 100% waiver of withholding tax. But they want to make it look like this government committed a crime. Mr. Speaker, I submitted document of the House. You think that's all? You see, Mr. Speaker? Cabinet conclusion, 20th December 2013, application for tourism incentives, Sandals Resort, International Group. And I can tell you all the things, but just this, pursuant to subsection 131 of the Income Tax Act, Cap 1502, 100% waiver of withholding tax for the period of 10 years from 1st January 2013. The same thing we did, you know. The same thing they did. But Konufai Lasa crime. That's right. But if it's them that do it, it's okay. You think that's all, Mr. Speaker? Cabinet conclusion, number 53B of 2016, 1st of February. 1st of February. Who was in government, Mr. Speaker? Establishment of incentive regime. I will read for you. Cabinet further approved 100% waiver from the requirement under Section 76 and Schedule 3 of the Income Tax Act 1502 to deduct withholding tax from payment to and charges from the non-resident group outside companies. You think that's all, Mr. Speaker? 27th April 2015. Application for BDSL. 100% waiver of import duty, value-added tax on all building construction material, and I skip all of that, and to the use of solely to facilitate renovation, rebuilding and reconstruction, and refurbishment of Smugglers Cove and Spa, and withholding tax exemptions on overseas rendered service. You think that's all, Mr. Speaker? Number 548B of 2013, 24th June, 100% waiver of withholding tax. 100% waiver of withholding tax on management fees to pay Capella Hotel Group Management Marketing Company for the resort. You know, Mr. Speaker, why do these men who are supposed to be honorable, why do they come in and continue to lie to the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, to try and make it look like we've done something so bad? One of them speaks about youth economy, youth economy. You know, Mr. Speaker, I've made this a document of the House from a report from CNN, where Mr. Fusha was saying AI is going to account for a lot of growth, not just in tech, but in most industries going forward. That is artificial intelligence. You know what they call it? Mind-bending. The man who wants to create a youth economy thinks that artificial intelligence, which is taking the world by storm, is mind-bending because he prepared the election. You know, Mr. Speaker, and these members, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, they come to this house. Now, let me tell you something about leadership, Mr. Speaker. Leadership is not for everybody. Those who fight to get leadership, it becomes elusive. In Exodus 3 and 7, it says, verse 7,
Preaching, brother.
And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry, and by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. That is where St. Lucia was. 5 years ago, Mr. Speaker. We had a taskmaster who made life difficult, and the people of St. Lucia have not forgotten what was done to them by this Labour administration. And they voted overwhelmingly to bring back the United Workers' Party to the governance of this country. And here's what God said in verse 8. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians. That is what this UWP did. We have delivered St. Lucia from negative growth and bad fiscal management of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, a brief history. How did the children of Israel get into Egypt? When there was the famine in Egypt, Joseph took 70 of his family members down there. But when the Pharaoh who knew them, who was the good Pharaoh, died, the other Pharaoh became scared. And because he was scared, he said, let us enslave the children of Israel because they are becoming too powerful. And so, the story of Moses begins, Mr. Speaker, 350 years after the children of Israel went down to Egypt. I want you to understand, Mr. Speaker. You see this FFF that these members speak about there? That is what they want to do. Enslave people in this country. They want you to come and beg them. They have tried to destroy family. And family is sacred, not to the opposition. And Mr. Speaker, I am a victim of this. They will go after any family member of yours. They will pay, they will offer them things, they will do all kinds of things to try and undermine you. Yes. Mr. Speaker, my wife, she had to leave because she's been a victim. No other person's family has been scrutinized more than my family. Mr. Speaker, in the last election campaign,
Honorable Member.
Mr. Speaker, the last election, here's what they said in the last election. This is not an election against the UWP. This is an election against the Chasney family. That is what was said by the members opposite. I did not hear one of them say, look here, politics is politics. Leave the man's family out of it. So, Mr. Speaker, they've not succeeded. So you know what they brand him as? They brand him as bourgeois, that he doesn't understand the little people and what they go through. But let me tell you something. When God wanted a leader to lead the children of Israel out of captivity, you know who he brought in? He brought the man who was raised in the palace of Pharaoh as a prince, in the person of Moses, who had passed as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. So, Mr. Speaker, you see, it is not where you live. It is not where you come from. As the member for Beaufort South tried to tell us, oh, nobody from Castries has been Prime Minister. So, Beaufort North. Nobody from Castries has been Prime Minister. So that's the legitimacy to... You see, leadership, Mr. Speaker. You have to earn the right to be the leader. You see, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, this is what they want. a liberator for Israel, was raised in the palace. You see, it's not where you are raised. It's the content of your heart. It is your feelings to the people. And when our Prime Minister sheds a tear for the people, because he feels and he understands, because he is an emotional being, you know what they call him? Even his prayers they criticize. But I will tell you something. I will rather follow a Prime Minister who leads his cabinet in prayers than a Prime Minister who stops prayers in his cabinet. You see, Mr. Speaker, they can talk all what they want. It's matters of the heart. That is what, and some people, we can say they cry crocodile tears. They know, but I know that I have a Prime Minister who has a heart and who has feelings for the people of this country.
Honorable Member, you have 15 minutes in which to complete your...
Mr. Speaker, most of what is in the budget speech are not mere promises, Mr. Speaker. A lot of them have already been done. A lot of them has already started. You see, Mr. Speaker, they keep on telling us about what they shall do. But I'm telling you, and as I went through the budget speech of my Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, I know we are in difficult times with COVID, but St. Lucia is in the best hands that it could be under this crisis. And for all those who say that God loves us in St. Lucia, nothing is new to God. Nothing takes him by surprise. And I believe that the right leader was raised for the right time, because God knew that COVID was coming and he wanted to prepare St. Lucia. Now the unemployment numbers are high, yes, but can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, at the rate that Labour Party was going, if unemployment among the population in general was hovering around 25% and youth unemployment was about 44%, I believe if Labour Party had remained in office, maybe overall unemployment would have been over 30% and youth unemployment would have been over 50%. Can you imagine that kind of scenario with COVID? Mr. Speaker, nous te fini. St. Lucia would have finished under St. Lucia Labour Party. But you know what? God in his wisdom and his foreknowledge, through providence, guided St. Lucia to a leader. He doesn't have all the answers. He cannot solve all the problems. But I know that he has a heart for the people of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, when you hear them talking about, some of them promise to deliver jobs, jobs, jobs. In the report, Mr. Speaker, it says, streamlining the economy, the budget speech, page 20 and 29. You know what it says, Mr. Speaker? That the unemployment numbers had gone down to 16.8%. That is not I shall. That is I do. We delivered on that, Mr. Speaker. So they can say all the I shall. Because I expect some of them to be flambeaus. Don't mind them. When they go secretly, they're voting for us. Because they have more confidence in our ability to lead the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you hear from SLP, he voted for me in my constituency. He's never had better representation in his life than me being his representative. You know, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell the members opposite, a man can talk all what he wants to talk. He can tell a lady, I love you, I shall marry you, I will do this, I will do that, until he takes her to the altar and say, I do. He ain't ready yet. They've been to the altar 3 times. And they've not delivered. They've left Lucia worse than how they found her. This government, Mr. Speaker, we have said we do. And every member on this side who have reported on what they have done in their constituencies. We are government of we do. You know, some of them, Mr. Speaker, they pretend that they love St. Lucia so much. You need to hear what they had to say about St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, in the budget speech of 2012, the former Prime Minister speaks about, you know, I have to talk about the NCA, but time will not permit me. The Prime Minister spoke about unemployment. Page 13, I think, is where it is. Here's what he said. Mr. Speaker, the official statistics show that the unemployment rate in St. Lucia was about 21.2% at the end of 2011, which translates to 19,000 unemployed persons. The latest figures we have for youth unemployment as of 2010 was 7,200, or 34% are jobless. By the time they left office, now remember, they were appointed on jobs. By the time they left office, Mr. Speaker, unemployment had gone up to around 25%, and youth unemployment 44%. Under this UWP administration, we brought down youth unemployment to about 44% and overall unemployment to 16.8%. Mr. Speaker, I mean, what else? What else do members opposite have to say? Now, here's what they said. They said they created how many jobs in the hotel sector. So let me tell you why their maths is always wrong. Because after the hotel construction was completed, it means that these construction jobs were no longer available and became permanent jobs within the hotel. So it's just a trade-off. You balance. Yes, you may have had a few more people employed in the hotel on a permanent basis. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the reality is there to show that when they said, 1,000 jobs was created in the hotel sector, how many was lost in the construction sector? Because these projects don't last forever. So there are one set of jobs during construction phase, which is replaced by the permanent jobs. Mr. Speaker, they cannot get it right, because when you cannot even understand that your performance is lackluster, that your performance lacks, I wish I could go to his 19, now they were trying to do something. I wish I could go through every section of his 1998 speech, Mr. Speaker, because I evaluate people on what they promise and after a time. So 1998, he promised a number of things. None of them. Maybe, let me not be so cruel on this. Maybe 1 or 2 things he accomplished. I can tell you one, Mr. Speaker. You know what he said? He formed a sector for privatization. And one of the first things that had to be privatized was St. Lucia Marketing Board. But today they want to castigate the member for Babono for privatizing the fisheries and the marketing board. Mr. Speaker, how can you speak so many times on both sides of your mouth? Huh? Is either you right or you wrong? So, Mr. Speaker, there is a quotation that I must get. Now, the member for DENNERY, you see, when they talk about performance, I have an entire file here on the minister's account. But they want to talk about transparency and accountability, and half of the projects paid for fully under this. Some of them was never started, and some of them never completed. They were paid for. The member for Castries, I have the certificate for the preschool You said that is mine. When you're ready for it, come for it. Mr. Speaker, you know there's a gentleman who presents himself as loving the people of St. Lucia. But when they ask him, let me make sure I get, on the 361. I wanted to touch on 361, Mr. Speaker. The opposition MP, Richard Frederick, congratulated the Prime Minister for acknowledging that Section 361 amounted to a gag on the press. Here's what Philip J. Pierre said. Philip J. Pierre disagreed. You heard that? Philip J. Pierre disagreed. He said that the section was misinterpreted by the public, so we decided to repeal it. It's as simple as that. Rather than being critical of the government, the opposition should be congratulating the Prime Minister for listening to the voice of the people. After you put a gag order on the people, now they should be congratulating you for removing it. He told me, talk about his thing with IPA. Well, let me read. Lapses and infelicities. It is instructive that IPA should be talking like this about me when he himself often visited my office seeking help. He begged me for assistance to travel to Barbados, and he never said thank you. When I arrived here this afternoon, I wanted him not to give me reason to expose his private affair. A former Prime Minister, you help somebody because he put a little pressure on you in the market. You come and you tell him, you give him help. You know, and then he's challenging me to say as if I will not say. Mr. Speaker. Which one? The one about Von Lewis?
Honorable Member, you have 5 minutes in which to come.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. There is an interesting story. There's an interesting story in the Bible, Mr. Speaker, of Barabbas. You know, when Jesus came before Pilate to be judged, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I hope you counted my minutes that are going there. Mr. Speaker, there's an interesting story, account in the Bible. Mr.
Honorable
Speaker,
members, honorable member, honorable members, honorable member, honorable member.
that's 2 minutes of my time. Mr. Speaker, in the story of Barabbas, Mr. Speaker, people can easily be influenced. The same people, Mr. Speaker, who a lot of good things were done for, were the ones who had been moved by the chief priests, the scribes, and the Pharisees to say away with Jesus, crucify him. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party has gone to an all-time low in St. Lucia. Now you see, what is interesting in this story is that the chief priests and them moved the people to ask to release Barabbas. But these days, it is Barabbas leading the Labour Party. And it is Barabbas that is influencing the Labour Party. And they are going in anti-Alan Chasney marches. Mr. Speaker, I have been a victim of racism. Racism has to do with minorities. I've been called all kinds of, I heard them crying about names that they are calling. When they called me poodle, it was a figure of speech. Yes. But when, But when you say, let back in dog's back, it's not a phrase. Oh, you see? Because they feel they're brighter than everybody else. When Emma said, pli mwen predye bay ti boy la, I pa corrige. But when they call boy, they fly up. You see, Mr. Speaker, anything you don't condemn, you condone. And the Labour Party has condoned by their supporters coming out in large numbers in an anti-Chasney match because he is a white man. No. Yes. And I challenge them. I challenge the members opposite. Yes. Because you know what? It is Barabbas that is influencing them. But now let me tell you something, Mr. Speaker. You know what? You know why Pilate did not let Jesus go? Even though he said, I find no fault with him. He was afraid that his political position would be taken away from him. So you know what he did? He washed his hands. And he said, I find no fault in the man. You know what they said? The people who were moved to say, crucify him, they said, let his blood be on our shoulders and on our children. You see this thing that we are allowing to develop in St. Lucia? We may not be here to suffer the consequences. If it is not outrightly condemned by every right-thinking St. Lucia, it is not just us, but this blood will be on the shoulders of all the children and the youth of this nation. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I outrightly condemn these statements. And I call on members opposite to make a statement to say that they have no affiliation. But you know what? Barabbas is influencing them. And if they talk too loud, Mr. Speaker, they will lose the political capital that they think they have. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia today is where it is today because of a combination of all of the people who contribute to where St. Lucia is. And it does not matter whether you are black or you are white, whether you are brown or whether you are yellow.
Should be wrapping up, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wrapping up. Mr. Speaker, there is a difference between a massa and Mr. Speaker, I will make my point on this. A massa is somebody who exercises a certain authority. But in the cabinet, all of you allowed him to be a massa.
Honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, I'm rounding up.
Wrap up, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the members opposite, they can make all the noise they want, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is that what we are perpetuating,
Honorable members,
what we are allowing to happen in this country, Mr. Speaker, if any one of us loves St. Lucia, we will never condone people's complexion. You see, Mr. Speaker, they attacked him as a white man running the campaign. They attacked him in every way. But you see, they thought that he would not perform. He has been one of the best performing prime ministers in St. Lucia. And so, Mr. Speaker, they have gone to the lowest common denominator to attack a man on the color of his skin, on the basis of what Martin Luther King said. Martin Luther King said, a man should never be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. And I know And I know, Mr. Speaker, the character of this Prime Minister is a character that is conducive to the growth and development of St. Lucia. I fully support the budget, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members.